Hi, my name's Nancy Sims. I'm a copyright specialist for the University of Minnesota Libraries. I'm both an attorney and a librarian, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about your research data. Who gets to decide where and how it's stored? Who gets to decide when it's shared? And who gets to decide how access is provided to other individuals? A lot of people think of this as a legal ownership issue, but as you'll see from this very formal graph, legal ownership is only a part of the picture. There's lots of other legal and perhaps formal business arrangements that you need to think about, and personal relationships that may affect your choices here. First off, legal ownership. You may be surprised to find out that there's not a whole lot of copyright protection for research data. U.S. law says, in no case does copyright protection extend to any idea, concept, principle, or discovery. That's from Title 17 of the U.S. Code, Section 102B, pretty basic fundamentals of copyright. So, ideas are not protected by copyright, and that includes research data and factual information. But, you say, my research was really hard work. I put in immense amounts of time and effort. It's true that research is usually produced through a lot of hard work, but the Supreme Court considered that issue in Feist versus Rural Telephone Services in the 1990s, and they laid down a really fundamental issue that copyright comes from original creative expression, not just hard work. An important thing to think about here is that there's actually a fundamental First Amendment value involved, a freedom of expression issue, where the U.S. law recognizes that once a fact has been uncovered, once an idea has been shared with the public, there's an important interest in being able to discuss that idea or those facts. And that is why we don't recognize an ownership in pure factual information and pure data. However, you can own a copyright in a compilation of data where that compilation includes creative expression. And creative expression can come from how you select or arrange your data. So you may own a compilation copyright in things like a chart or a graph related to your research data, but there's still no ownership for the underlying factual information, the underlying ideas, so others may be able to extract that, reproduce it, and discuss it elsewhere. Even though copyright doesn't necessarily provide strong protection for data, patent law may provide all kinds of protection where ideas are novel, non-obvious, and have some sort of real-world application. The patent law is one avenue to legal protection of data, and actually another avenue to legal protection is secrecy. If you don't share your data with others, they actually can be prosecuted via trade secret law if they try to get around your secrecy efforts. So there are some legal avenues for protection of data. Copyright provides weak protection. Patent and trade secret may have other elements. So legal ownership of data is a slightly slippery concept. But there's some other legal issues that aren't necessarily specifically about ownership that you might want to keep in mind. Have you signed any contracts related to your research data? One really common thing would be a non-disclosure agreement. Some of your other formal and informal business relationships may also affect what you can do with your data. Your grants may have come with conditions. For example, a lot of federal grants now come with a requirement that you have a data management plan. They don't necessarily require that you do particular things with your data, but that you have thought about what you're going to do with the data. Your institutional affiliation may also affect what you can do with your data. Some institutions may require broad sharing. Other institutions may require high levels of secrecy. Similarly, if you have institutional intellectual property policies or technology transfer policies, those may affect what decision-making you can make and what has to go through other individuals. And if you're involved with an institution that's subject to federal limitations such as HIPAA or FERPA, or if your research has gone through an institutional review board that has put limitations on how you can share your data, that may all affect what you decide to do. Finally, your interpersonal relationships are really important parts of your whole decision-making process. You have collaborators and colleagues, and they may have their own ideas about the right way to store, share, and provide access to data. There's also some really difficult issues that arise among disagreements among advisors and students that work with them, or supervisors and employees that work for them. If there's any disagreements between those individuals, it can be quite a difficult process. Many institutions do have some processes for resolving those kinds of difficulties. Your decisions on how to deal with your data may be affected by your competitors. If you know someone else is working on a similar problem and they are about to publish, that may move up your date and suggest that you need to share sooner. Or that may also mean that you can wait a little while, let them put the feelers out for other responses, and perhaps you come in with clearer or cleaner data later on. So a final thing to think about is the cultural practices and the expectations in your research field, or even in your specific lab or environment. Many fields are more open about how they share data, and other fields may be much more closed or may have more personal understandings of how data is shared. And lots of labs, for example, will have long-standing practices of archiving data and migrating it over time, while other labs may have no practices whatsoever about storage and long-term preservation. Fundamentally, all of these different things are going to affect how you make decisions about your data. The legal ownership is a small part of it and may not be as clear as you thought it was, but other legal and formal arrangements may affect your decisions, as may your personal relationship with other individuals. Finally, I hope that you have the ability to put all of this through a lens based on your goals as a scholar. Every scholar has slightly different goals. Perhaps yours are best achieved through secrecy. Perhaps yours are best achieved through long-term sharing. I hope you found some of this information helpful. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thanks.